So welcome to today's deep dive. We are super thrilled you're joining us. And on the desk today, we have this single, just endlessly fascinating source text. It's excerpts from a document titled Sarna Dharma, Indigenous Faith and the Quest for Recognition.
It is a great read.
Yeah, it's packed. And our mission today is to explore this ancient, hyperlocal, completely nature-centric way of life in India, one that is currently colliding head-on with the massive machinery of modern bureaucracy.
Which is where things get really tense.
Oh, absolutely. But beyond the politics of it all, we really want to understand why this specific struggle matters to you right now, especially as we're all trying to navigate, this age of intense ecological anxiety.
Yeah, and it really is the perfect text to dig into if you're looking for alternative ways that humans can relate to the planet.
For sure. So maybe set the stage for us a bit.
Yeah, of course. To set the foundation for you, Sarna Dharma is an indigenous faith system practiced by several tribal groups, and they're primarily located in the Indian state of Jharkhand. But, and this is key, when we talk about Sarna Dharma, we basically have to throw out our conventional definitions of religion.
Like completely out the window.
Pretty much, yeah. We are not talking about a set of abstract theological beliefs that you, ponder once a week in a building.
Right.
We're talking about a holistic, 24/7 way of life.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's an entire societal architecture built from the ground up on ecological harmony, collective ethics, and a profoundly daily connection to the natural world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to understand the modern political struggle they're facing today, we really need to understand the fundamental mechanics of Sarna Dharma itself.
Definitely.
I mentioned earlier that there's no central rule book or like a Vatican-like authority.
Yeah.
So what actually is the anchor? What physically grounds this faith?
The anchor is literally the earth itself.
Wow.
Yeah, so the term Sarna, it translates directly to sacred grove. These groves are known as Sarna Stal, and they basically act as the absolute center of gravity for these tribal communities.
So they're the hub.
Exactly. They are religious centers, sure, but they also double as the primary community gathering spaces. They're like the town halls of the tribal villages.
Okay, and who runs the rituals there?
The rituals are conducted by a village priest known as the Pahan, but the real core engine of the faith is animism and nature worship. The followers of Sarna revere trees, forests, hills, rivers, the sun, and the earth.
But they don't just respect nature the way, like, a hiker might respect a national park, right?
Oh, no, not at all. They view the physical environment as fundamentally divine.
And the source text points out one specific tree that seems to sit at the very center of their cosmology, the sal tree.
Yes, the sal tree is incredibly important.
But it's not just worshipped randomly, right? There's a deeply practical reason why this specific tree is so revered.
Exactly. The spiritual reverence is basically born out of biological necessity. The sal tree provides this incredible timber that is highly resistant to rotting.
Which is obviously crucial for building shelters.
Right. And its broad leaves are stitched together to make plates and bowls. The wennen from the tree is used for incense in rituals, but it's also a really vital medicine used to treat wounds and ailments.
Oh, wow. So it's multi-purpose.
Very much so. Even the seeds are ground down to produce cooking oil, so if the sal tree forest dies, the community physically cannot survive.
Wow. So over generations, that ultimate reliance morphs into ultimate reverence.
Exactly. The survival strategy becomes the spiritual doctrine. The tree isn't just a resource for them, it's a deity that provides life.
That makes so much sense. The sacredness is really just a reflection of its utility. But I have to push back a little on how this society regulates itself.
Okay, go for it.
You have a faith entirely based on nature, right? But without a rigid code of conduct written down on paper.
Right, no rule book.
So how does this faith maintain its internal discipline? Like, how does it ensure people don't just cut down all the sal trees for short-term gain? Without a text to consult, how do you prevent the tragedy of the commons?
That is a great question. And the text actually details a very specific, powerful mechanism for social regulation, ancestor worship.
Oh, no.
Yeah, in Sarna Dharma, ancestors aren't just figures you remember fondly on a holiday. They are believed to actively reside in the natural environment.
Wait, literally in the environment?
Yes, particularly in those sacred groves we talked about. And they actively protect the family in the village.
So to put that in perspective for you listening, imagine if you truly believed your great-grandparents were physically residing in the oak tree in your backyard, just watching your every move.
Right. Think about how drastically that would change your daily behavior.
Oh, completely.
If you believe your ancestors are in the forest watching you, you aren't going to chop down more firewood than you absolutely need. You definitely aren't going to pollute the river.
Because your grandma is literally in the river.
Exactly. This belief inherently enforces immense social discipline and respect for the environment without anyone ever needing to consult a written legal code.
That is wild.
You behave ethically because the enforcers of the ethics are omnipresent. They're in the leaves and the soil right around you.
Wow.
And if you look at the core values this system promotes, taking only what you need, viewing the earth as a living, breathing entity with agency, I mean, this deeply ancient practice is practically a blueprint for modern sustainable development.
It really is. They've essentially been practicing what modern climate scientists have been begging the industrialized world to do for decades.
Truly.
Which naturally brings us to the next piece of the puzzle here. We know what the faith is built on, but how does an entire culture ensure its survival when its whole database of knowledge is, well, invisible?
Yeah, we have to look at the scale of this first. Sarna followers are heavily concentrated in the tribal-dominated belts of Sharkhand.
Okay.
And our source breaks this down geographically.
Yeah.
You've got the Chotanagpur Plateau region covering districts like Ranchi and Gumla,
Oh.
where the Munda, Oran, and Korea tribes are prominent. Then there's the Kolhan region, where the Ho tribe is dominant. And the Santhal Pargana region, which is primarily home to the Santhal tribe.
So we're talking about very diverse groups of people spread across varied terrain.
Exactly. But the unifying thread across all these tribes is their emphasis on the collective over the individual.
And you see that collective emphasis so vividly in their festivals. I mean, the text doesn't just list holidays. It basically describes synchronized ecological events.
Yes, that is exactly what they are.
Take the festival of Sarhul, for example. It's not just a random day off work. Sarhul marks the tribal new year, and it's timed perfectly with the blossoming of the sal trees.
Right, it's entirely tied to nature.
And the text notes that no one in the village is allowed to sow seeds in their agricultural fields until the Sarhul rituals are fully completed.
Because the festival is actually the mechanism that ties human agriculture directly to the biological clock of the forest. The Pan, the priest we mentioned, he observes the natural signs, conducts the rituals with the sal blossoms, and essentially gives the community the green light that the earth is ready for planting.
So the ritual is literally an ecological management tool.
Exactly. And there are others like Karma, which celebrates the youth and forest regeneration, or Sorai, which honors cattle and the harvest. Every major cultural event is tethered to a physical reality.
Okay, but coming back to this idea of information preservation, how do you keep these intricate, hyper-specific traditions alive across millions of people without writing a single word down?
It's a huge challenge, right?
Yeah, I know we talk about oral traditions, but in the modern age, it's hard to grasp how durable that really is. It's almost like they have a decentralized blockchain system.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Right, because in a centralized system, if you destroy the corporate server or burn the holy book, you destroy the data. But in a blockchain, the ledger is distributed. Every single person holds a copy.
Yes, exactly.
To delete the religion, you'd basically have to erase the entire community.
What's fascinating here is that relying on oral transmission isn't some primitive limitation that they just haven't overcome yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is a highly evolved, intentional feature of the faith. Think about it. When a religion is locked away in complex written texts, it almost inevitably creates a hierarchy.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
You naturally develop a specialized class of literate scholars or clerics or lawyers who hold the keys to interpreting the knowledge. They become the gatekeepers.
And then you have the lay people at the bottom who just, receive instructions.
Yeah.
The power dynamic shifts entirely.
Exactly. But in Sarna Dharma, the knowledge isn't locked away in a text. It's lived, it's danced, and it's sung by everyone.
Everyone participates.
Right. Every single person in the village who sings a folk song during Sarhul or participates in a harvest ritual is actively acting as a guardian of the faith.
The community itself is the library.
That's beautifully put. It actively promotes equality and collective decision-making because everyone has equal access to the spiritual data.
The community at the library. I love that.
Yeah.
But, okay, if this system is so remarkably self-sustaining, if it has this beautiful decentralized resilience built into it, why is there suddenly a massive urgent demand for government recognition?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right, because the source text shifts gears pretty abruptly from ancient sacred groves to modern governance. We suddenly start reading about census forms and bureaucratic categories.
Yeah, the shift happens because the modern world has essentially expanded and imposed a rigid, inflexible structure over this fluid reality.
Okay.
The core conflict outlined in the document is the census problem. Every 10 years, the Indian census counts its massive population. And to do that efficiently, it forces people to categorize themselves into clearly defined boxes.
And let me guess, there is no box for Sarna Dharma.
Exactly. Currently, the census forms do not have a specific box for Sarna Dharma.
So these millions of people are essentially forced into a bureaucratic corner.
Yes. The followers of this faith have to either falsely classify themselves as Hindu or Christian, or they get shoved under a catch-all, highly bureaucratic umbrella category called Other Religions and Persuasions, or ORP.
Wow. Just imagine the psychological toll of that.
It's massive.
Your ancestors have worshipped in the exact same sacred grove for centuries. Your entire societal structure is built around these deeply held ecological truths, and the government hands you a piece of paper that essentially says you are just an other.
Right, it's a complete erasure of identity.
It really is. And this is not a fringe complaint. The text highlights a major political milestone. In 2020, the Jharkhand Assembly actually passed a resolution formally supporting the demand for a separate Sarna religious code.
They want their own box on the form.
Exactly.
It's a demand that has gathered immense political momentum. Tribal organizations have been mobilizing, holding rallies, and lobbying the central government, demanding a distinct Sarna code for independent recognition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. There is a massive supreme irony playing out here.
Oh, definitely.
We just spent all this time establishing that Sarna Dharma is a fluid, decentralized, nature-based way of life. It inherently defies the rigid structures of organized religion. It doesn't have a strict border.
Right.
So isn't forcing this beautiful organic belief system into a rigid, bureaucratic spreadsheet, like into a designated code, fundamentally altering the nature of the religion itself?
It's a valid concern.
By begging for a census code, aren't they inadvertently forcing Sarna Dharma to mimic the very organized, centralized religions it historically differs from?
It is a profound irony, and your observation really hits at the core of the modern indigenous struggle globally. Putting a neat label on something inherently wild inevitably changes how it interacts with the world.
You can't put lightning in a bottle without, changing lightning.
Exactly. But we have to ground this push for a code in the harsh reality of survival. The sociocultural relevance of this code, as our text outlines, is fundamentally about defense.
Okay, so it's a shield.
Yes. It's an assertion of indigenous identity and cultural self-respect against overwhelming pressure. Without this specific code, without this bureaucratic shield, tribal traditions risk being wholly absorbed and assimilated into the dominant surrounding religions.
So it's a defensive maneuver. They essentially have to play the modern bureaucratic game to protect the ancient spiritual reality.
Exactly. And they have strong legal footing for this demand, too. The text specifically anchors this to the Indian Constitution.
Oh, really? Which parts?
Article 25, which guarantees the freedom to profess, practice, and propagate religion, and Article 29, which ensures the protection of minority cultures and their distinct languages, scripts, or cultures.
So it's literally written into the fabric of the country.
Yes, from a constitutional standpoint, granting this code would simply be a reflection of India's pluralistic democratic spirit.
That makes total sense.
And beyond the philosophy, there is a very raw, practical, political reality here. In a democracy, numbers dictate power. Separate recognition in the census means accurate demographic data.
And data leads to funding, right?
Yeah, exactly. Accurate data leads to better policy targeting, increased political visibility for tribal issues, and a stronger tribal representation in the legislature. Basically, if you aren't counted, you don't count.
Okay, so the necessity of the code makes total sense from a survival standpoint.
Yeah.
They absolutely need the armor.
Yeah.
But changing a national census in a country of over 1 billion people, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. Our source lays out some serious roadblocks regarding the actual path forward.
It's an incredibly heavy lift administratively. The text outlines several major hurdles. First, you have the sheer administrative complexity of overhauling the census framework.
Right, because you can't just add a checkbox overnight.
Exactly. Implementing a new religious code nationwide requires creating crystal clear categories. It requires establishing robust verification mechanisms to determine who actually qualifies as a Sarna follower, and you have to build a massive national political consensus.
And then there's the internal challenge of diversity within the tribes themselves, right?
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier that this faith spans the Munda, Orion, Ho, Santhal, and Korea tribes across wildly different geographic
Yeah,
regions.
this diversity is huge.
Because there's no single rule book or pope, these tribes don't all follow identical rituals. The way the Santhal celebrate a harvest might look totally different from the way the Munda do it.
Right, local variation is a core feature.
So, creating a uniform, one-size-fits-all legal classification for a system that prides itself on local variation has to be incredibly difficult. How do you draw a border around something that is meant to be borderless?
That inherent difficulty leads directly into the political friction highlighted in the source. Whenever a government starts recategorizing populations and creating new demographic codes, it inevitably triggers intense identity politics.
Oh, always.
And looking at the source's breakdown of the political landscape, there's real friction here. Critics argue that adding a new separate religious code risks further fragmenting the population, and it could lead to political polarization based on religious identity.
Right, that's the counter-argument the text outlined.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, supporters of the code view this not as separatism at all, but as a deeply necessary, long overdue act of cultural justice. They argue they've always been distinct, they just want the paperwork to reflect reality.
So what does this all mean for the actual future of Sarna Dharma? Our text concludes with a section literally called The Way Forward, proposing solutions like using environmental laws to protect the sacred groves.
Yes, that's a big part of it.
But I'm going to push back on this solution too.
Yeah.
Let's say we take a sacred Sarna stall, a spiritual grove where the ancestors reside, and we protect it by slapping a modern environmental protection law on it.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Don't we risk stripping away its spiritual significance? Doesn't it just transform from a living, breathing temple managed by the village priest into, a sterile state park managed by government bureaucrats in a distant office?
That is a very real fear. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is actually highly aware of that exact danger. The solutions proposed aren't about handing control over to the state at all.
Oh, they aren't.
No, it's about a synthesis, blending modern legal frameworks with ancient spiritual authority. The way forward requires deep ethnographic consultations directly with the tribal communities so that their perspective is what leads the policy, not top-down bureaucratic mandates.
No. Okay.
It also involves promoting tribal languages within the formal education system so that the oral tradition has a modern platform to survive on.
So it's about utilizing existing laws to empower the communities themselves rather than replacing their authority with state authority.
Precisely. The text highlights the critical need to properly implement powerful existing legal frameworks in India. For example, it points to the PISA Act.
What does that one do?
This law essentially decentralizes governance. It empowers the Gram Sabha, which is the local village council, to make decisions over their own land, resources, and cultural identity.
Oh, wow. It gives the legal power back to the local library, so to speak.
Exactly. The text also points to the Forest Rights Act. This is a fascinating piece of legislation because it flips the traditional conservation model on its head.
How so?
Instead of the state fencing off a forest and saying, stay out, the Forest Rights Act officially recognizes the forest-dwelling tribal communities as the legal, historical stewards of the land.
Oh, that is huge.
It transfers the legal rights of the forest back to them. And then you have the provisions of the Fifth Schedule of the Constitution, which provides special administrative protection for tribal areas.
Okay, so the tools actually are there.
Yes. The goal isn't to turn sacred groves into state parks managed by outsiders. The goal is to use the modern legal and environmental apparatus to build an impenetrable wall around the tribe's ancient spiritual autonomy.
It's giving them the legal teeth to protect their own sacred spaces on their own terms.
Exactly right.
It's using the weapons of modern bureaucracy to protect against the overreach of modern bureaucracy. It's a brilliant, if, precarious balancing act.
Very precarious.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've traveled from the deep shade of the sacred sal trees and the beautifully decentralized oral traditions of Charkhan's tribal communities, all the way to the rigid, highly political columns of the modern Indian census.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And I think the biggest takeaway for you listening today is that Sarna Dharma is far more than just a niche anthropological case study.
Oh, absolutely not.
The core operating philosophy of this faith, its absolute insistence on collective ethics, its practical reverence for the earth, its sustainable integration with the biological clock of the forest. It offers a profoundly relevant alternative worldview.
It really does.
In our current climate crisis, where the industrialized world is just desperately searching for theoretical ways to live more sustainably, the followers of Sarna Dharma have been actively living the answer for centuries.
They really have.
Yeah.
They are living proof that a society can organize itself around ecological preservation rather than ecological extraction.
Yes, exactly.
But as we wrap up our exploration of this source text, it raises one final critical question, something for you to continue pondering after we sign off today.
Okay, what is it?
We began this deep dive by imagining a religion with no written scripture, a faith that is entirely anchored to the specific physical landscape it inhabits. The sal trees, the rivers, the specific sacred groves.
Right.
Those aren't just symbols, they are the physical manifestations of the divine for Sarna followers.
Yeah.
But we live in a world of aggressive mining, rapid industrial development, and accelerating climate change.
Yeah, we do.
So, if that physical environment is irrevocably altered, if the sacred sal trees are clear-cut for development, or if the rivers completely dry up due to shifting climate patterns, what happens to a spiritual identity that has no written book to fall back on? Can a nature-based faith survive the literal destruction of its nature?
That is a haunting and vital question to leave on. If the forest is your scripture, what happens when the pages burn? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a completely new lens through which to view the intersection of faith, nature, and the modern world. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.